Hello, and welcome to the Trade Finance Distribution Initiative podcast. This is the business consortium for all the business stakeholders who are tapping into the future of liquid trade finance. Now, we've come to the end of the year, and we're not going to say goodbye to 2022 without speaking to one of the big members and big drivers for the TFDi, who has been at the forefront of ensuring that this asset class is noticeable amongst all the institutional and non-institutional investors out there. I'm talking about André Casterman. André, you were the first guest that we had on the TFD initiative. And we're so happy to have you here today to kind of look back at some of the great things that as a team we've been able to do this year. André, welcome.
Thank you, Doris. Delighted to be on the show. And this is a very timely session as we were preparing the first TFDI meeting exactly 4 years ago.
Oh, that's amazing. So I guess it's a very timely position to actually discuss a lot of the things that we've been doing in the last year, wouldn't you say?
Exactly.
Let's kick off with the first quarter of the year. Now, the mission for the TFD initiative has always been to make trade finance liquid. And I think, it begs, bringing to attention again from you, why this mission was put in place and how towards the first start of the year we started to kind of build upon this mission. Can you shed some light on that?
Yes, definitely. Trade distribution is a very niche market, but it's a strategic market for those financial institutions involved in global trade and receivables financing. Actually, personally, I've been uh, hearing about this challenge for banks since about 12 years. When I was involved in the ICC for various digital trade innovations, already then the challenge banks highlighted was to how to work with capital market firms, how to benefit from institutional liquidity. And this is exactly the mission we defined 4 years ago: is to make trade finance more liquid, basically. And making trade finance more liquid is strategic for not only the top banks but also the non-bank originators. We'll talk about some of them in order to face the capital adequacy requirements that the regulators have defined following the global financial crisis of 2008, basically.
Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of push in this direction, and mostly to your help, being in a lot of strategic places, events, pushing out this message about what is most important, what is there. So let's talk about a bit of the membership that we've seen over the years. So at this year, we announced about 20 new members join the TFD initiative, and since then, we've had other new members like a Supplier Plus, ARC ratings. Why do you think there's been an interest, a growing interest in the TFD initiative specifically this year?
Yeah, basically, indeed, we if we go back over the last 4 years, and that is the reason why we have more and more members joining, is basically when we defined this mission again at the very kickoff of December 2018 in London with the initial members, mainly the large banks. Basically, since then, we have built the most comprehensive trade distribution community, but also the most comprehensive trade distribution technology hub. Using the one of the members, trade tech in particular, but also additional technologies. I'll come back on that. We have also, over the last 4 years, demonstrated how capital markets can tap into trade financing, working with those who are in the market, who are servicing those assets and the corporate relationships or SMEs. We define basically also as part of TFDI new technology-based practices, and we reused existing practices and combine those existing practices on the trade side and combine those on with existing practices on the capital market side. So typically MRPA combined with notes issuance, and we have gone much further than initially planned, because actually this year we have expanded the distribution practices to tokenization, which was not part of the initial mission actually, but technology sometimes offer opportunities, and we've gone that far. So there are more things we want to do going forward, and we'll talk about this. But definitely that is main reason why this large community of TFDI, as well as the trade tech distribution hub, is more and more relevant to new members, and those include indeed capital market funders. You have members like Allianz Global Investors, Aegon Asset Management, Legal and General Investment Management, and NNIP. I mean, these are big names, have all launched their trade finance funds to extend liquidity to originators, including non-bank and banks.
And then you have, on the non-bank originator side, you have, Trade Finance Global, Pemberton Asset Management, Supply Plus, Vable, recently joining the TFD initiative, which is such a big climb as well, as they are contributors who are now here, to the SME financing gap.
Yeah, definitely. We have seen new types of originators, so non-bank originators, we call them. You can check them out on the TFD initiative website, and you've just named them, and they're really focusing on the underserved market, if we could call it this way, providing new ways, basically, to finance payables on the back of mid-cap buyers approving invoices, and that enables SMEs basically to get early payments on approved invoices. But there are other ways, but this is typically the traditional supply chain finance proposition that large banks launched 20 years ago, that is being brought down market to those mid-cap buyers and their SME suppliers. Very attractive proposition. And those non-bank originators indeed need liquidity as well, which is why they are very interested in working sometimes with banks or with capital market firms in order to indeed benefit from the liquidity that their clients need.
And we saw with AFC, Africa Finance Corporation, this expansion into like multilateral development banks across. There's also interest now broadening in new emerging markets of how the TFD can actually also form a branch or a connection to other corporates that would help to bolster that third party role in development.
Yeah, this is definitely an area we want to grow. I mean, multilateral developments play a role of trusted third party. They are trusted third parties in the market, and they can definitely bridge also the corporates that need financing with those investors that are discovering trade finance and that need a trusted intermediary. Of course, banks are there as trusted intermediaries, but still private companies, commercial companies, whereas multilateral development banks represent the public sector. So, very interesting avenue also with AFC and additional multilateral development banks we are talking to now.
And the interesting thing is now that you'd mentioned it earlier on that with the drive for automation and digitization, technology platforms joining the TFD initiative has actually become rather important. Now we've seen the likes of XDC Network and SureComp, how the Trada token brought a new dimension to how businesses can actually use trade finance tools and security tokens. Can you tell me a little bit about um, because this was happening in June. It was June, July that the Trada token was launched. Can you tell me the impact this potentially made to the trade finance market?
So the goal of TFD initiative is definitely to expand the technology stack available to asset sellers and asset buyers. The partnership between TradeTech and XDC Network is an example of such enhancement of the technology stack, which we started in 2021 when XDC Network joined TFD initiative. And the result has been the tokenization of assets into indeed on the DLT, and the launch of the Trada token in July 2022. That basically is a new bridge between trade finance and the investor space. But thanks to DLT and the tokenization, we're basically removing even more frictions and costs from the whole process. And we are enabling retail investors to tap into the trade finance investment class. And retail investors can achieve this because, thanks to those lower costs and the increased automation, we enable investors to start funding trade investment class as from $100, basically. Something you can't imagine on a note issuance process because the costs there are much higher. So that has been a great, a great partnership. There are more partnerships in the pipeline, of course, because the whole goal of TFD initiative is to continue enhancing the technology stack with additional tech partners.
No, absolutely. And this year, September in Porto, the ITFA conference in Porto, very successful. It was noted that, it's one of the first times we saw that there was a section specifically for the technology sector and then, for everyone else. And, you will agree that this wasn't possible in the last few years. Technology is steadily taking a forefront in the way people approach using this asset class as an important added value to the processes for banks and non-banks to be able to transact. Now, off the back of that, we've also seen that implementation of laws and rules that help trade finance as an asset class be more liquid, such as the ETD bill. Has been something that has been instrumental. We have that being implemented, and we've worked with lawmakers. So the last podcast we had with Sarah Green from the Law Commission, and the ITFA, TFDI, we've all worked together as policymakers, working with regulators and kind of helping these bills that will help documentation and digitization pass through. Can you tell us a little bit about why this is so important now for us to look at policies that will enhance the way trade works to change?
Yes, definitely. This track is as strategic for the technology world as working with incumbents such as banks. So as I often like to say, the banks are not going away, but even more important, the regulators are not going away. It's very important to work in full uh, collaborative mindset with the regulators because sometimes the laws need to change incrementally, gradually, and in a very focused way in order for new technology options to basically deliver on their benefits. And that's exactly what the UK is doing today. And the UK and the English common law is a critical legal framework for the whole world because most of global trade runs on the English common law. So this electronic trade documents bill, which is now being debated in the House of Lords and soon in the House of Commons, will enable basically on the origination side to digitize negotiable instruments such as bills of exchange and promissory notes. That those two are instruments that were put into common law in 1882 when the Bill of Exchange Act was developed, and basically we want to give those two instruments a second life thanks to the digital capabilities. Whichever digital options and solutions are developed by the market, it is important for the law and the common law, English common law, to recognize the possession of intangible assets, such as a digital bill of exchange or a digital promissory note, or could even be logistics documents such as bill of lading or warehouse receipts. But it's important to recognize the possession of an intangible, something which is not possible today in the law, and the transfer of ownership of such intangible, such payment obligation recorded in an electronic way. So that is an important development on the origination side. It's key for TFD initiative members working with capital market players because the distribution uh, automation that TFD initiative focuses on will bring more institutional liquidity onto those instruments. And of course, we have other avenues to work with regulators, such as on digital assets themselves, because we want more and more tokenization to extend its benefits beyond the Trada token and beyond the UK and the European Commission, the EU. Um, and that's where we have more ongoing talks with regulators, specifically on digital assets.
I mean, Andre, let me pick your brains on the future. If there are other policies, I would say, that you think would also ease access into this asset class? What kind of other policies would they be? Obviously, we've talked about digital assets, we've talked about ETD. What other things you think would, should lawmakers particularly be looking at this time now?
Yeah, there is much focus, much talk about the ETD because that's what started 3 years ago. But now the Law Commission through Sarah Green and Sarah's work and the Law Commission for England and Wales are working on the digital asset uh, topic across multiple use cases and industries. And this is where indeed it is important for the law in general, not only for the Bill of Exchange Act, but the law in general to recognize that um, real world assets, as we call them, could be a real estate, or it could be indeed a trade payable, can be tokenized and traded on in a fully electronic way. Basically, the possession has to be recognized electronically, transfer of possession, and also all of the consumer protection processes need to recognize that those real world assets could be physical as well, like real estate, have to be able to be tokenized. So it is a huge industry to develop for the UK, thanks to the work of the Law Commission, and it's a huge opportunity for everyone in the market, basically banks, tech companies, but also investors, institutional and retail investors, because tokenization in general will increase the accessibility to assets to many more investors, including retail investors.
If you're still listening, this is the Trade Finance Distribution Initiative podcast, and we're speaking with André Casterman, who leads the TFD initiative and also the DNI. We're talking about this year and all the growth that we've seen within this community, and we just want to kind of look back at some of the things, the big progresses that we've seen over the year, the strategic track around the development that we've seen with fintechs specifically. Can you give a little bit about of what you've seen as an expert player in the field of what progress we've made?
In general, fintechs have progressed tremendously over the last few years. I've been really fintech focused since 2016, and indeed, following the global financial crisis of 2008, banks have focused a lot on compliance, worked with highly specialized fintechs in around AML and compliance. But as from 2016, 17 onwards, the innovation mindset came back. And there was much more focus on digitizing processes for the sake of user experience, basically, really providing clients much better user experience. Now, a lot of banks have implemented fintechs in their own front office, back office, on an individual basis, where things have been much more challenging and harder to progress is all around collaborative innovations, where you need a whole market to move in sync, multiple banks and counterparties, also the lawmakers, as we just discussed. So this is where the pace of adoption around those collaborative innovations is sometimes seen as much slower than the individual innovations that banks can execute in their own shop for their own clients without any dependency on counterparties. And basically, TFD initiative is definitely a great example of how banks and fintechs can work together on collaborative innovations. We set the mission very clearly in 2018, and we launched TFD initiative early 2019. Banks have discovered new technology options. They have tried the new digital distribution options that TFD initiative delivered through Trade Tech and sometimes indeed in partnership with others such as XDC Network. And basically, um, we see more and more that there is a certain there is a strong partnership mindset between banks and fintechs, but at one point you see that we could do much more. We could do much more if we would basically embed this technology, this collaborative technology stack into a bank owned, bank regulated, or bank governed, I should say, market infrastructure that would be supervised by regulators and that would enable the technology hub to do much more than pure technology proposition, basically, or technology capabilities.
That has been a really important aspect because, we've seen that change from banks feeling that fintechs were trying to replace what aspects of what they do. But now it's changing to more, as you said, a collaboration in seeing that fintechs can actually design something that works with the banks, that is bank compliant, um, that you have like a technology stack that operates in a way that is secure and safe, and you're able to collaborate more than just banks doing it on their own. So a bit of that interoperability, we've seen a bit this year, and it's been very promising. I think from my personal perspective, speaking to a lot of these black bank leaders, seeing the interest actually and the forthrightness of no longer just lip service, but actually saying this is who we're working with and this is what we're interested in exploring, and are the needs that we feel that fintechs need to be able to solve for us. So it's very promising indeed.
Yes, it's all around. We've seen that example over the last. We've seen examples over the last decades, such as the setup of Euroclear, which is also bank governed, it's supervised, it has a role of a trusted third party in the market, regulated. We have the same example on the fintech side. 50 years ago, banks launched Swift, which is also bank governed. So delivering the technology is what definitely fintechs can achieve. And TradeTech has done that as part of TFD initiative to address the collaborative innovation around digital trade distribution in the most comprehensive way because all of the distribution mechanisms are now covered. Um, but we could do much more by setting up indeed a bank governed scheme. We could call it a financial market infrastructure that would basically transform a fintech into a regulated infrastructure that banks would run from a governance point of view. It's all about reusing the existing capabilities, but moving from a technology proposition to a real financial market infrastructure. And that means being supervised and being able to do much more than basically only providing technology to banks. So these are ideas that are worth developing further, and we will be indeed looking at this in 2023.
Yeah, and speaking of 2023, let's look ahead at what our members can expect. What can TFDI members expect from us in 2023?
So definitely, in the short term, we're going to release many more podcasts on those critical innovations. We've talked about the electronic trade document bill. We have talked about digital asset tokenization on the policy side. We have talked about fintech partnerships with XDC Network, the future of Trada token, and the work with back office vendors such as SureComp to really cover the end-to-end automation. So focusing on those very pragmatic tracks is going to be done in Q1. And as more and more banks and funders are going into production, many have gone into production already, and more are going now, we're going to be able, and we encourage them, of course, to share their testimonial. So hopefully by Q2, we're going to have a series of testimonials around those asset sellers and buyer and investors, buyers, and that will also basically demonstrate how we achieve the mission of making trade finance as liquid as possible.
Really looking forward to that. I think, it's been an incredible amount of work and body of work on your part this year. You're literally everywhere. Every event in trade finance, Andre is there. And, on that note, I just wanted to ask you as well, as we wrap up the year, which has been your favorite event that you've attended this year and why?
Well, I'd like to say I always like um, the International Trade and Forfeiting Association annual conference, the ITFA annual conference, where we have indeed focused on progress around those policy and technology innovations. So we had indeed the fintech briefing at the ITFA conference taking place in Porto, where indeed we have brought early adopters on the electronic trade document bill technology stack, on the TFD technology stack, on TRADA, on the use of notes issuance as well, with a set of investors. So that always a great place to bring early adopters on stage. And basically, we're going to repeat that next year, 2023, in Abu Dhabi. In October, second week of October, this is being planned. So, but I wouldn't want to wait until then. My next big event will be a GTR in Dubai around the 21st and 22nd of February, if my memory serves me well. And that will be a big milestone also to bring some of the TFD initiative early adopters on stage, as we're going to have a joint afternoon with GTR on the 22nd of February.
Exciting times, looking ahead and looking forward to all of that. Now, Andre, before we say goodbye today, obviously it's end of the year and it's Christmas time, and just want to catch your brains. What are you going to be up to this Christmas? Are you doing anything fun? Anything you want to share with the community? How do you relax after such a very busy year?
Well, usually I like to say to my family, the Christmas break is actually the best break, because really
Mm.
everyone is on holiday or taking time off. So is really the right time to shut down the laptop and enjoy indeed some family time. So the first week will be definitely about family time with the wider family, and the second week will be a holiday on the ski slopes.
Oh, exciting. Well, that's it for Christmas. It sounds like you're going to be having so much fun. I will pretty much be on my couch, being a couch potato, enjoying time with the family. It's much needed. And I think everybody out there, should just take that time as well to regroup, recuperate, get that family energy going in this special season. Andre, thank you so much for being here on the TFD Initiative podcast. It's lovely, lovely having the chat with you and learning about all the things that are coming on the initiative.
Welcome, Doris. It's a pleasure to be here, back after 2 years, and we look forward to inviting indeed many more members in the next few months on this stage.
Indeed. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening on this episode. It's been the final episode for the podcast series of TFD Initiative for this year. I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a fantastic 2023. Have a blast, have an enjoyable holiday, and we'll see you next year.